The Hershey Bears pick up a decisive victory in game number one.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holney. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other platforms before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Hershey Bears picking up a decisive victory in game number one. One of the things I said is the biggest key for success for the Hershey Bears is to get off on the right start, and they did that by taking down the Wolfpack in a decisive fashion. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll take a look back on the 2018 Washington Capitals and their season when they won the Stanley Cup. And then a little bit later, we will talk about how Craig Berube is named the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But just to get it going here, talking about the Hershey Bears and the excitement that surrounds this team. And I think for me, the biggest thing is the Capitals did not get the season that they were looking for, but the Hershey Bears are absolutely crushing it. And the interesting thing, ironic thing perhaps, is that you take a look at the Capitals and the Rangers in the postseason. And who are the Hershey Bears playing? Well, they're playing the New York Rangers AHL affiliate, the Wolfpack, in the Calder Cup playoffs here. And the difference between the two is the Hershey Bears absolutely destroyed the Wolfpack in game number one. Is that something that is sustainable, and can they keep it going? But in the first game, very impressive. The Hershey Bears defeated the Hartford Wolf Pack 6-1 in the first game of the Atlantic Division Finals on Thursday at Giant Center. So you want to talk about a good start. That is a good start. And the one thing I will say is that the Hershey Bears had the momentum going right away. They were out shooting Hartford. They controlled the pace. It was definitely their game, and that is why they had the decisive victory. Hershey Bears' dominant performance in game one, the impressive 6-1 victory over the Hartford Wolf Pack in the Atlantic Division Finals of the Calder Cup playoffs, highlighting the depth and talent of the team's prospects and rising stars. And I watched it on AHL TV. If you guys haven't had a chance to check it out, make sure and do it if you can't be at Giant Center. The video quality is pristine, and it looks near NHL quality to me. And watching the game, it was exciting as you are seeing the future stars of the Washington Capitals playing out there, and they were getting a lot of different contributions from a lot of different players. Suffices to say, as the score was 6-1 Hershey, a very, very exciting game to watch. But the individual performances is what really stood out for me. Even Miroshnichenko's standout goal in impact in the playoffs, a highlight reel goal for Ivan Miroshnichenko in that, showcasing his talent. His dominant performance in the playoffs thus far gives me reason to believe that he is going to be much better in the fall when the Capitals are in camp. The contributions from other players such as Chase Prisky, Ethan Frank, Alex Limoges, and Jimmy Huntington and Garrett Roll. Notable performances from Henrik Slop-Pierre, Lucas Johansson, Joe Snively, and Henrik Rubinski. They were getting production up and down the lineup. This is a really, really great Hershey Bears team. And I ultimately think that they do have what it takes to win another Calder Cup. They were steamrolling Hartford, and I don't think that there is a way for Hartford to get back. I understand it was just game one. The momentum has swung so greatly for the Hershey Bears. Now, to be fair here, let's take a look at the situation for Hartford as their netminder that was supposed to start actually got called up to the New York Rangers because Domingue got injured. So all of a sudden, Hartford is down their depth chart in net. That did factor into it. I get that. But other than that, it was a dominant performance by even Miroshnichenko, getting the goal scoring from Chase Prisky, Ethan Frank, Alex Limoges, Jimmy Huntington, and Garrett Rowe. Quite an evening. I personally cannot wait for Saturday night. I am that excited. But it wasn't just the offense, the defensive display. Dylan McElrath, Hardy Hamann-Octel, and the Bears blue line effectively limiting scoring opportunities for the Hartford Wolf Pack. It was quite stunning. And Dylan McElrath is a guy for me that I think that he should be on the big team in the fall. He has that toughness. He has the skill set. He is the captain of the Hershey Bears, but I thought that he filled in flawlessly in his time with the Capitals. I would look to see a whole lot more from him in the fall. But the same goes for Hardy Hamann-Octel. We remember that he was with the team in camp and then got cut, but he really kind of popped out. Can we see a whole lot more from Hardy Hamann-Octel in the fall? A lot will be determined on what happens in the Calder Cup push here. I think that certain players can solidify their spot on the roster for the Capitals in the fall based on the play that we see right now. There's some players that can even take it to the next level. I'm talking about Hendrik Slop here, who I still think doesn't look like he is really thrilled about playing down there. I know this is the Calder Cup playoffs, but I think he got that taste of NHL Capitals hockey, and it's hard to go back down to the AHL, but he is a big contributor down there as well. He is another guy that can still work on his game. He showed steps of improvement on the Capitals this season over his previous stints with the team. I think that getting this added experience is going to be absolutely huge. And net minding. The net minding was just rock solid, and that was in large part, of course, because Shep Daddy Hunter Shepard's solid performance, stopping 13 of 14 shots. Again, what have I talked about? If you're an everydayer on the show, I've said that if there is a scenario where Charlie Lindgren or Darcy Kemper gets dealt out of Washington, I have absolute faith, 100% faith in Hunter Shepard and the job that he would do, and Clay Stevenson. I mean, both of those guys kind of vacillated between number one and number two as being the best of the best in the AHL. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Hunter Shepard, number one, Clay Stevenson, number two. They flip-flopped a couple times, but for the duration of the season, it was Hershey at number one and number two in all of the AHL. Quite stunning. So the series outlook, the 1-0 series lead over the Hartford Wolf Pack and the team's preparation for the next game on Saturday. Just keep going with it. Again, I'm excited to watch it. I'll be watching it on AHL TV. I can't make it to Giant Center, but I'm really excited from what I've seen in just game number one. A dominant win over, all things considered, a really good Hartford Wolfpack team. I mean, they're at this point in the playoffs. They're not a poor team, and it was a dominant performance. The anticipation for an exciting and competitive playoff series as the Hershey Bears strive for a further advancement in the Calder Cup playoffs. Again, I think they're doing just fine. I would be surprised if something goes off the rails. And the big thing is it's the coaching and it's the depth. They have it in spades. My big worry, of course, is that when all of the Calder Cup wraps up, if Todd Nelson will still be a coach on the team, or is an NHL team going to scoop him up and have him on their team? I mean, his reputation, it speaks for itself. We saw that he took the team and won a Calder Cup last season, and you take a look at what he's doing this season. I think that a lot of NHL GMs are kind of sitting back and saying, let's just kind of see how all this plays out. But if he takes this team deep, or say they win another Calder Cup, I'm going to go ahead and say that he will probably get scooped up by another team. It's unfortunate for the Bears if that happens, but good for Todd Nelson as he has been clutch for the Hershey Bears behind the bench. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will take a look back in time to 2018 when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup against great odds. I'll talk about that straight ahead. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And it's not just NBA tickets. Say you want tickets to the Nationals game. Say you were super busy at work all day and you forgot to get tickets. Fear not, as tickets are actually cheaper close to first pitch as well. So take the confusion out of buying tickets with Game Time, and take the guesswork out of buying tickets as well. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Capitals didn't get the result they were looking for. I've talked about that a lot, and sometimes it's fun to reminisce about the 2018 season and how that team with Alex Ovechkin and Nick Backstrom and TJ Oshie, how they found a way to overcome against great odds. Does this team have what it takes to get it done at least one more time while Alex Ovechkin is playing for the Capitals? I would like to think so. But let's take a look back to 2018 and how they got it done. The Capitals' journey to their first ever Stanley Cup championship was a long and arduous one, marked by both triumph and tribulation over the course of their 43-year franchise history back in 2018. The regular season success and playoff heartbreak, that is something that was quite commonplace for the Capitals, as oftentimes people said the Capitals are good enough to make it to the playoffs, but they're not good enough to win a Stanley Cup. For years, the Capitals had been one of the NHL's most consistently strong teams, making the playoffs in 10 of the past 11 seasons and capturing 8 division titles during that span. However, their postseason runs were always defined by heartbreaking defeats, whether it was blowing a 3-1 lead, losing in devastating Game 7 showdowns, or simply being outmatched by more experienced, battle-tested opponents. And Capitals fans, we saw that this past postseason, rather, when the Capitals were taking on the New York Rangers, as they were outmatched by, I wouldn't say necessarily more experienced, but what I would say is a more skilled team. And they found a way to get it done. And the hard part was moving past their past failures. In 2018, the Capitals exhibited a newfound resilience and determination, liberated from the weight of past failures and high expectations. They navigated a treacherous playoff gauntlet, vanquishing demons like the rival Pittsburgh Penguins and the high-powered Tampa Bay Lightning before dispatching the upstart Vegas Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup Finals. And I remember that quite vividly. Every day I would drive home from work and it would be JJ Regan and Tarek El-Bashir, and they had the Capitals podcast going, and I would listen about what their thoughts. And I remember both of them thought the Capitals were down and out against Columbus, against Tampa, and kind of lucky that they found a way to hang around And then they did the unthinkable and they won a Stanley Cup. Watching those games, and I remember quite vividly them playing the Tampa Bay Lightning and how it was tough and how the Tampa Bay Lightning were really good and how they struggled. The same goes for Columbus. And thinking to myself, they found a way to get this far, but there's no way. There's just no way they can take down the Golden Knights. And what they did with Pittsburgh as well, it was quite something, and how they were able to get it done. And it was done in large part because Alex Ovechkin, he was a guy that weighed heavy on his shoulders about, you're a good player, the Capitals are a good team, but you're not good enough to be a Stanley Cup winner. The long-awaited triumph of prolific goal scorer Alex Ovechkin, at the time with 607 career goals, solidified his status as a generational talent and dismissed any lingering doubts about his leadership, determination, and effectiveness in crucial playoff moments. If you guys remember when he was sitting on the bench in the last seconds when his hand was over his head, or his hands were over his head, like he couldn't believe it, like, this is finally happening. We're finally going to do it. And then screaming in jubilation when the team did the unthinkable, the improbable, not impossible. They won the Stanley Cup. And what was it all about? It was triumph over adversity, finally getting rid of vanquishing old demons and saying, yes, this team can do it. We're good enough. And I think that a lot of the, current day Capitals roster and, whatever the roster will be in the fall, they can learn a lot from that 2018 team. And they can do that with the leadership of Alex Ovechkin in part. The win represents the culmination of a journey marked by years of playoff heartbreak and relentless criticism. Ovechkin's perseverance and unwavering commitment to his team are evident in his performance throughout that entire playoff series, where he played a pivotal role in leading the Caps to their first ever Stanley Cup victory. And that's something that there quite a few other teams in the NHL actually have not done. And that was quite a feat. And I still have stuff hanging up all over my studio and my house about the 2018 season, and remembering exactly where I was when it happened. I was watching it with my wife, and I was thinking, they're going to find a way to screw this up. I mean, this team just cannot win a Stanley Cup, and they did it. And then after them winning the Stanley Cup, I remember thinking to myself, I don't know what to do with myself. They actually did it. I wanted to run. I wanted to drive around in my car, honking the horn, waving a Capitals flag. But it was one of the moments where I just could not believe that they finally did it. After watching this team for so many years, to get that monkey off their back was quite something. Talking about it, though, the historic achievement of the Washington Capitals, the team's long-awaited the long-awaited ascent to the pinnacle of hockey glory, represents the culmination of years of hard work, determination, and unwavering belief. The victory not only validates Ovechkin's individual brilliance, but also cements his legacy as one of the greatest players in the history of sport. Quite something that they were able to get it done, and something that I will never forget. And I don't know if everyone that's watching or listening to this show was a fan back then, but it was quite something. And, I'm sure I'll hear people say, why are you talking about 2018? It's the summer, and it's fun to kind of look back a little bit. Listen, on this show, I talk about Capitals coverage, current Capitals coverage, 5-6 nights a week. Sometimes it's kind of just fun to sit back in the easy chair, drink your favorite beverage and think about better times with your favorite hockey team. But the one thing that will live on more than anything is Ovechkin's legacy and inspiration. Ovechkin's unwavering belief and unrelenting pursuit of excellence have finally paid off. His performance in the playoffs, marked by clutch goals and unwavering leadership, has silenced the critics and cemented his place in hockey immortality. The victory is not just a personal triumph for Ovechkin, but a momentous achievement that will forever define his legacy and inspire future generations of hockey players. And I think that's true. I mean, you take a look what Alex Ovechkin did for hockey in DC. Long after he hangs up the skates, we will forever remember what he did for hockey in DC, bringing the cup there in large part. let's not be revisionist. Alex Ovechkin had a lot to do with that. I understand that it was a team victory, but it was Alex Ovechkin doing what he does best. And a proud moment, thinking back on it for the Capitals, but also Alex Ovechkin, who, by the pundits, primarily, talking heads and people from the Pittsburgh media said, yeah, the Capitals and Alex Ovechkin, they're good, but they're not good enough to win a cup. Well, they did just that. And that's something that can never be taken away from the Capitals, is winning a Stanley Cup. And I don't want to be the person that's living on former glory, but it's sometimes fun to just think back, being that it is that time of year, we're well into May here, and the Stanley Cup is just going to be in June here sometime, that, the time has got away from me a little bit. And 2018 wasn't exactly yesterday, but sometimes it's fun to sit back and reminisce about this really great team and how lucky we are to have this as our favorite team and get to watch them each and every winter. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about how Craig Berube was announced as the next head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'll talk about that straight ahead. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So in the summer months here, I do take a look around the NHL. As you guys know, I've done this show for the last 3 seasons. During the season, it is all Capitals 5 or 6 days a week. But in the summer, sometimes I like to peek my head up a little bit and look around what's going on in the NHL. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are always an interesting team for me, a team that absolutely or a city that absolutely loves their hockey team, whether they're playing well, whether they're playing poor, they love hockey in Toronto. And they did a big thing by making a coaching change. And some people thought it was a good idea. Some people thought it was a bad idea. And you take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, they are a team that has struggled for years. And every year people are like, this is going to be the year for the Leafs. And every single year, it's not. And what is one of the biggest weaknesses for the Maple Leafs is in net. They don't draft well. They don't address the net minding situation. They pick up goalies like Ilya Samsonov. We saw how great he played for the Capitals, or the lack thereof, and in other moves. And it's just, it looks oftentimes like an all-star team out on the ice. When you see all the goal-scoring threats that they have, it's just sometimes it doesn't seem like it's a cohesive unit. And then you take that, plus the poor net minding, and that is why that team struggles. And who's always the fall guy? Who is always the first guy to get the axe? The head coach. And head coaches know that. You get hired to get fired, and you don't get too comfortable. But I think that they have a really good upgrade in Craig Berube. And we know that he was the former head coach of the St. Louis Blues, and what he did for the St. Louis Blues organization. I am still absolutely baffled that they decided to cut ties with Craig Berube after all he did for that team. And, you take a look at the direction that team is going in right now. I don't see the success there that they would have if Craig was pushing the buttons. But in any event, the past is the past, and today is today. The Toronto Maple Leafs have appointed Craig Berube as their new head coach. Berube brings in valuable Stanley Cup-winning experience, having led the St. Louis Blues to the championship in 2019, right after the Caps. The Maple Leafs, who last won the Cup in 1967, I wasn't even alive back then. Hope that Berube's leadership will help end their long-standing championship drought. There have been a lot of different coaches that said, I am going to be the guy that's going to take the Maple Leafs over the top. And every single time, that is not the case. And it's a tough thing as a head coach. You can only do what you can do with the weapons that you have at your disposal, your tools, if you will. We saw that with the Capitals as well. As you take a look at Spencer Berry, he did what he could do with the tools he had. The same thing goes for in Toronto. I think that a lot of this also lies on the GM getting that rock solid netminder and taking care of one of their biggest deficiencies. Berube replaces Sheldon Keefe, who was dismissed following the team's early playoff exit. During Keefe's tenure, the Leafs only managed to advance past the first round once in 5 years. Berube, who is 58 years old, previously served as the head coach of the Blues and the Philadelphia Flyers. Known affectionately as the Chief due to his First Nation heritage, Berube transitioned into coaching after playing 1,100 games in the NHL. So again, change is coming. I don't think that is too surprising. And if we want to talk here briefly about other potential coaching moves, what is going to happen with the Carolina Hurricanes now that they were eliminated by the New York Rangers? They fought valiantly. I thought, they're going to do it. I didn't think it was possible. They were going to do it. They were going to come back and win this series. It seemed like they were going to be able to do it there, but they didn't. The New York Rangers were just too much. The New York Rangers are still my favorite to win the Stanley Cup this year. I don't see a team stopping them. And it's interesting, but the thing that I keep hearing and seeing and have observed is, are the Hurricanes really going to cut ties with Rod Brind'Amour? I really don't think that's the case. He is the face of the franchise and kind of the heartbeat of that entire team. If you take Rod Brind'Amour out of the Hurricanes, you really have nothing. I saw how that team struggled before he was there. I know that they won a Stanley Cup in the past. I know all that, but there were also some lean years for the Hurricanes as well. And I think that the Hurricanes are the best that I have seen in quite some time, with Rod Brind'Amour pushing the button. So coaching changes are exciting for me. It'll be interesting to see what Berube can do with the Toronto Maple Leafs. What is all going to shake out? Will Bruce Boudreau, will he find another head coaching job in the NHL? I think that ultimately if he wants one, he can. But it is what it is. And, I think that some teams have reservations about Gabby just based on the fact that he can get the teams maybe to the playoffs or close, but then he can't really do anything historically, or he hasn't historically done anything in the playoffs. So it is an interesting time of year. And once the Stanley Cup finally does wrap up, that is really when you will start to see changes take place as far as July 1st and in free agency, those kind of thing. I hope that the Capitals are active. Head coaches will be coming and going. It is an exciting time to be a hockey fan, not just a Capitals fan. If you don't love what's going on in playoff hockey right now, I don't think you have a pulse, because regardless of if the Capitals are in it or out of it, there is some truly great hockey being played right now. And if you haven't done so, check it out. All right, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel, available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.